Back as always. This is our 25th session, gang. 25 of these we've done. Oops, spotlight my video. I am the host. Of course I spotlighted it. Good. My Zoom is giving me weird messages today. So before we get going, welcome to anybody who's brand new. I think I saw at least one name that I didn't recognize on the list. And so the little bit of background, just a reminder that this is not a John Cogswell class. In fact, it's not even a typical class at all. It is you guys getting to watch me work my way through the book so we can learn as much as we can from what John's written down. And I add in a little bit of what I remember from my classes with him and from other experience. And I'm just sort of using it as a textbook for myself and for people who want to follow along. So with that in mind, if you haven't been here before, we do a little bit of an intro and backup on what did we do last time. And then we get a running start on a new setting. In previous chapters, we've done a setting of a stone from a prior setting's making. But from here on out, I think, almost all the settings from here on out are the doing of the setting is the setting of the stone. So, so we won't have the backlog of playing catch up to actually setting stones going forward. And at the end, we do a little bit of show and tell. You are welcome to pop on video or not as you prefer. It is being recorded and put up on YouTube. And you're welcome to pop on with questions. If you're not comfortable speaking them, you can always toss them in chat. It may take me a moment to see them. And feel free to put in thoughts if you've got cool tools that we haven't thought of for this. I'm also going to post in chat if I get the right keyboard, I'm going to post in chat my links to actual workshops I teach, official workshops that are all open for registration right now. Oh, no, first I'm giving you all the links. That's all the links of important things, including the Facebook group that goes along with this, which doesn't have a lot of activity, but does have some extra documents and resource links and things like that. Then next up, if chat will behave, is the list of links to workshops. Here's hoping that I'm not pasting the same thing twice. Come on. There we go. Those are the classes that I'm teaching, which you can see on my website. And if you are a Rio buyer and you are not already a pro, you can sign on and use the teacher's account. The Rio for Schools account. This is my code that you can put in. You can put in as many teachers' codes as you have teachers who provide them, and it helps Rio support us, the educators. We don't get any kickbacks from it, but it does allow us to sort of plan. If I'm doing an actual in-person class, I can plan a kit that you might want to buy and so on. And it does give you, the first one will give you a 6-month window of getting the Rio Pro pricing. It does take a couple days for it to get active, and sometimes you can speed that up by calling them, but you'd have to submit it under your account info and just attach that code. And again, after 6 months, you'll have to redo one. Questions about any of that, or anybody new who wants to say hi and introduce themselves?
Just want to say hello to everyone. But I'm not new.
You're not new. No, you're definitely not new. You've been with us from day one, I think.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, Sonia, you got something? Nope, she's just waving her hands at something.
No, I'm just turning the lamp on.
Oh, got it. Okay. Well, let's get going. I hope that from last session, those of you that were here, you managed to successfully get your gravers handled, at least your number 52, and get a little practice in with stitches. How many people actually tried stitching? Anybody? We got a Carmen waving her hands. I know a couple people were pinging me with questions about it. Anybody else?
I'm sorry, I was interrupted. What's the question?
Did you do any stitching, practicing any stitches? No? Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to go through the quick version of sharpening our gravers again. And I am then going to do a couple practice stitches so you can see the activity. I have a setup that I don't think is ideal for when you're actually doing this, because I don't recommend you do stitches on your setting ball if you have one. It's got a little too much movement, but it was the way that I could get you the best screen visual, I think. And you guys are going to have to help me if I go out of screen on this, but I think this is the best close-up I can get you guys for stitches. Is that showing up relatively well? Tiny little.
Yes.
What was
The
that?
the lighting is, I
A
don't
little
know.
weird. See if it gets better. Is that better or worse?
Better.
Better.
Better without the
Yeah.
light?
Better.
Okay, we'll see how I do without that much light, but we'll see.
There. That's
Okay, so this is my practice plate. And again, I don't recommend you be on the slip slidey ball because otherwise you have to support it and you could slide past it and poke yourself with your graver. So this is just really because if I had anything I had it down on where I put a block of wood in front of it or something, I was blocking some of the angles. So I'm going to try to do this for you guys with this angle. But before we ever do that, we're going to do a little sharpening of our number 52 round graver. Somebody posted on the group that it doesn't look very round, and I would agree with that sentiment. It does not look very round. Where do I need to go? There I need to go. But compared to some of the others, it's rounder, I guess would be the thing. On this, we've already sized it. This I probably left a little bit long for me. And I did not do a whole lot of cutting down of the tang the way that John describes, but you can make it a much smaller profile. I did put a little bit sharper angle in there. John recommends we cut these down to 60 degrees. And then on all of the gravers that he talks about using, except the flat graver, we're exclusively going to be using this stone. And we only go to the Arkansas stone for the last step on the flat graver. See if I can get this in view. So this one is only for the final steps of the flat graver when we get to the later settings, or if we're doing bright cutting for some of our early chapter 3 bezel settings and so on. So we're putting this aside. They both are oiled. You want enough oil on there that you're not flooding yourself, but if it's the first time you've used a stone, it's going to soak it up over time. So you'll see it goes away pretty quickly. So I'm just going to get a little bit of the oil down to the end that I'm going to work with. And this is that triangular posing that he wants us to do, to use our fingers and thumb as a positioning device so that they're running along the stone as well. And that helps keep us flat to the surface. Otherwise, we're going to be tipping, etc. And you'll want to be checking it to see if you are getting a plane on your face of the graver. It's really easy to do without realizing. And it just means that you've tilted one way or the other more than you think. So getting the practice in to go either back and forth, or he said he doesn't care which way you go, whether it's longwise or shortwise. I have a tendency to go faster when I go along this, and that's when I get my warps to the flat surface. So I'm trying to practice both my Zen patience of grinding and going slow, just going slower in general and going in smaller strokes to keep more control over it. If I go right into the speedy, I'm guaranteed to be tipping it and mucking with it. And so I'm just grinding it straight across on the angle that I'm looking for.
What grade stone is that?
This is the fine side of the, what is the name for it? These are the things that the names always tangle me. So I'm using just a basic India oil stone that has 2 grits, and he says don't even bother with the coarse, just use the fine. So I'm using the fine side for this. And again, just making your triangle so that you're following that angle of the line of the face of it. And once you've got it ground a bit, you're going to test it on your thumbnail. It should catch right away instead of scraping. I've still got a little bit more. It's not catching fully. So I'm going to do a little bit more sharpening. And I find that I have to sharpen I can't just do a whole row of stitches and go from there. I have to do a little bit of sharpening in between rounds. Make sure I'm staying. I've got such a tight focus that if I run out of screen, let me know. That's the wrong way. That's the way I want to go. So trying to stay in screen for you.
So this is 60 degrees?
It's close to it. I don't know that I didn't take out a measuring device and check it. I just ballparked it. It's still a little slippy. Get a little more oil. I'm gonna have no thumbnail left by the time I'm done with this today. That's catching. And then you want to dump it a couple times into a piece of wood to take any of the little bits that get sort of nubbly around the edges, and you're good to go with the stitching. So I'm going to practice this stitching exercise if I don't fling the parts of my storage device off. Hang on a sec, I'm going to find another one. And
What about the very tip that you did the other side the last time?
that's only on the flat one. That's only the flat one.
The flat graver.
Yeah, if I did it last time, I was not paying enough attention to which one we were filing.
Okay.
So what you're doing, that's what the other stone is for. That's this stone. And what we're doing that on the flat graver is we're drawing the bottom edge of it down, and this does a high polish to it. And then he talks about crocus paper or crocus cloth, which I had to do a little digging. It nowadays seems to not come in cloth form, but in sandpaper that's been treated form. So I've ordered some of that, and when I get it in, I'll try it out. But basically what we're doing is that tiny little lip on the end of the flat graver. So this is what we've been polishing. This is the edge that we're going to do the little shine up on a flat graver only, because that keeps a clean line when we're doing bright cuts and so on.
Rachel?
Yep.
Can you put your engraver with the template to show the 60 degree?
With a template, do I have any? Yeah, this is definitely not all the way to 60 because I didn't do it any further than what I was demoing, but let me see if I have anything that will show to you guys big enough. Where's my 60 degree? Oh, I'm pretty close to 60 degree. What do you know? I didn't think I was that close. I didn't think I'd gone far enough. I might be at like 61 or 62 degrees. There you go. Is that what you're looking for? Except I'm going from the wrong side. So I'm not anywhere near 60 degrees. What am I doing? 0 to 60. Where's my... Nope, I haven't gone near enough. I'm only about halfway there. I didn't think I was that close. So, and again, what that's doing, just so you guys know, that's not a make or break for whether your tool will function for you. What he's trying to do is give us as shallow a profile when we're carving as possible. He wants as little material in the way of what we're seeing and what we're pushing up. So that just improves your access to the cut, basically. Makes a steeper. Question?
Rachel? Yeah, I had a question. Was one of the gravers needing to have a 30 degree or do they need to be 60?
Am I mixing it up? Yeah, maybe I did get it right. Let me go back to the book, see what his degree measurements are. 60, no, he was talking about having a 60 degree angle. He wants a steeper angle, not a shallower angle.
Okay, I got it then. All right, thanks.
So it's on page 134 in the hardcover where he shows and he talks in a section about where, you know, why one of them can get taken down further. He takes a lot of the upper part of the graver down and so on. And when we go to the other excuse me, the other gravers, you'll see that I did that a little bit more. I just didn't get back to this one to file down.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. So I should be taking a little bit more angle overall off of there, down to about like that. And it'll get a deeper push with deeper cut with each push, because we're not pushing down, remember, we're pushing forward. So again, we're only grinding on the grinding stone, on the oil stone. It's only when we get to the number, is it 42 that's the flat, or 4 that's the flat? Whichever is the flat one, we will use the other stone as well. So whenever I haven't done these in a while, I'm going to come back and do, sorry, go ahead.
It's the ones in the 40s.
The ones in the 40s? The
Yeah,
flats of the 40s?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. What does it say? Page 134, that the 50s are round, 40s are flat, and the single numbers are the onglettes.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah. So when we do the 42, we'll do the pullback on the other stone. So I should be careful not to tap that on the stone because it may lose the sharp. I always come back and do a couple practice stitches if I haven't done this in a while. And I'm going to try to get this. This is going to be awkward for me, but I'm hoping I can get a good view for you guys of the back and forth wiggle he's talking about. So note that we're starting at a fairly shallow angle. I'm not up like this. I'm not digging really deeply and steeply. I'm not going scraping across. So I'm doing about here, starting at one edge of a line I've marked, and I'm pushing in just enough to catch. I'm not pushing down and in. I'm just doing a wobble, wobble, wobble. It's wobble, wobble, wobble. And I'm walking the graver forward. That one I slipped a little bit. Let me back up a sec. So I'm walking the graver forward by wobbling it. And it peels up the little coil of metal that's along the surface at that level. Because I restarted that one, it's a little short. But by the time you're done, you'll start to practice you'll have a set of coils that are of same size. Yeah, guys, I need to add a little more light because I can't see what I'm doing. Let me see if I can come up with something that's behind you guys. Is that gonna, no, then I'm not gonna be able to get to where I need to go. Is that, yeah, when I angle it is when it gets bad for you guys. Is that terrible like that?
Well, try it.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
No,
that's
but you're a
good.
little low on the screen.
It's a little low on the screen. Better?
You're frozen.
I'm frozen. Uh-oh. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, but give it a second.
Yeah, there you go.
So we're in the screen. I'm facing you
That's-
guys. And let me just do a little bit more sharpening. Because I think I knocked it against my stone. Never hurts to sharpen. And as we can recall from the session where we put the handle on it, it's one of the reasons there are different size and shape handles. So that you can change out your handle once the graver gets too short. Okay, so just to practice again, putting it in, and I'm doing a side to side wiggle.
And you're off the screen.
And I'm off the screen. Okay.
Careful of your finger.
I know this is a hard one to hold where you guys can see it and where I'm not about to slice my fingers if I go sliding. So again, I'm just wiggling side to side with a tiny amount of forward pressure, not downward pressure. Until I get to the mark that I'm trying to pass for the stitch. And then I've got a tiny little coiled up stitch. It's going to look funky because it does want to coil on you. You're going to want to play with them a lot. Try to avoid that because the more you move them, the more likely you are to snap them off. So I'm going to lift one so you can see how tall it gets. You'll note in the book that John says that 2 millimeters is the max height he can get on these that he thinks will hold things securely with this style. I don't know that I've ever gotten a full 2 millimeter prong. So I'm going to actually flatten it with pliers. It's going to break off likely when we do this, but I want you to see how tall they get.
So your two parallel lines there, that's 2 millimeters in height?
Yeah, I think I might have done 1.5 millimeters because I know I never get the 2 millimeters.
Okay,
Whatever it is, I'm looking for something that you can practice consistency with. And because we're doing 4 millimeter stones, the max we're going to have is a 2 millimeter curl of metal because we come from the center basically and work outward. So really, it's a good practice somewhere in that range. So this is the uncoiled. Let's see if I can get an angle that you guys can actually see.
Yes. You can
This
see.
one down at the end is uncoiled, and you'll see it's a little taller than its buddies
Mhm.
because I've lifted it straight up. So they all coil. And I want to talk before we actually go to setting stones, because this is ultimately the kind of setting we're going to do, but we're going to do it on a nice, neat grid. Some of the challenges you will have while practicing this one that I still have, like I'll admit freely, this is not a setting I enjoy, nor is it one that I use on a regular basis, because I don't think it's sturdy enough for much work. You certainly don't want it on very active use jewelry, because they're very easy to knock down. But it is good practice for subsequent stitch work that we're going to do on bead setting, which is the next setting. So some of the challenges you run into, your stitch doesn't go straight, meaning it wants to warp off to one side or the other. That's one of the biggies. Sometimes you can correct that. It's more about gentle correction as you bend it back over, straightening as you go. Oftentimes it'll break off in the middle. That usually happens when you've started and stopped. You don't want to have to restart a stitch if you can help it. So try to finish a stitch before you lift the graver back off. You will have moved it around too much. So you've broken it off because it's very small amounts of metal, and you just put you've hardened the metal with the little back and forth you're doing. Another thing that'll happen is, and you'll see this when we're getting to why we do a set of them to practice, is that you've marked out your setting and you get your what you think are the right positions on your far side stitches. You put your stone back in place, and then when you start to create the other sides, you don't go far enough. One of the tricks is we're going to be putting little circles, but we're going to do it in stages. So one of the tricks is that your stitch, if here's your circle, your stitch needs to actually end just at the outside of it. So one of the mistakes I make a lot is to go right to the circle. And then when I put my stone back in place, it's too snug and I snap off one of them. If I haven't put my stone in place, I'll often bump into it. And these are so fragile that if you just slide your stone out of the way to get it out of there and you knock into another prong, you're going to knock that prong off because you're putting sideways pressure against it. So those are all the kinds of things that happen as you're doing this over and over again. Some of them more recoverable from than others, depending on how much material you have to work with. You can sometimes dig up a second stitch from the same slice that you've just made. It's going to be hidden by the stone. So that's good. I would do these with opaque stones if you can at first. You may get clean enough lines down the road that you want to show off the little star that appears underneath. But the stones here, I'll pop this stone up so you can see the mess that goes under there. There's a little X of material we've dug up, right? So until you're really precise and neat with these, you probably don't want that showing through a transparent, translucent stone. And you saw how easy it was for me to pull that up. That was a mostly set stone. Some of what makes these sturdier is doing them all butted up against one another in a plate. So they become each other's, they keep the prongs from moving by having them close together so that there's not a lot of stuff that can get in there. One of them sitting by itself, anything brushing against it is going to knock it down. Questions about that so far while I switch out my plate?
And
I
he
don't have a
doesn't say any. Go
Sorry.
ahead, Carmen.
I have a question about when you sharpen, you're supposed to use the Indian oil stone and then afterwards the Arkansas.
So the Arkansas is only used on our flat gravers.
Oh,
It's
flat
the final
grade.
step of our flat grade. Yeah, he does, he sort of gives us those directions all at once. So it's a little confusing. It took me a few reads to realize that we're only doing the sharpening on everything, and then we come back and do the Arkansas stone only as a bright polish, because the Arkansas stone is think of that as the 1000 grit sandpaper for your gravers. It's the cleanup polish part.
Okay, because I felt that my graver was better when I used the Arkansas stone afterwards, and then when I went back to the oil, the
Yeah.
Indian oil stone, because I just saw you do that, I got confused, and it's not.
Me too. I
Okay.
probably confused you.
Okay, all right, so it's
Um,
only for the flat.
It's only for the flat, yeah, because I think the very first time that I did it on screen, I used both of them. And then I
Yeah,
realized
that's what I
partway
thought.
through that I didn't need to do that for anything except for the flat. But if I didn't catch that up on screen, my apologies. My rereading, unless you guys are seeing something different, says that we're only doing the grinding. We do the grinding on all three, and then we do the touch up only on the back side, on the final polish of the flat graver.
Okay, I'll make a note of that. Thank you.
Yep. What else did I want to say? Oh, I also want, so we're going to be working, this setting is on page 143 and 144. And I want to point out a couple of very important things that I realized I had not picked up the first time I practiced this with John. The first is, partially because his book has contradictions between the images and the words again. One of them is that he only wants us marking out a half of the circumference of the stone when we're starting our steps. But if you look at the drawings on page 144, it says trace a line around it. And I took that to mean putting a full circle. But the version in his text that says do only half of it makes your life so much easier, because what we're doing is we're making a marker for where we're going to position that side's prongs. We're creating those prongs, and then we use them as a stopper to tell us where we mark the rest of our prongs out. So I do still recommend, especially if you're doing the basic 4 up, that you do a grid to give yourself your cross lines like I've done here. So I just made a plate, and I didn't put this one, I put this one in the plastic just because I didn't put a back plate on it. You could also do like the back plate that I showed you that we're going to use when we're setting our faceted stones. So either activity works to give you something stabilizing. This one, he describes us putting this on the bench up against a locked in brick block of wood, as opposed to the craziness that I'm doing here, because you want the stability for your graver strokes more than I'm getting out of the ball. What else did I want to point out in the notes? Fine pointed scribes. He ain't kidding. You need something very, very close, very fine. So I've just put in a pin vise. I just put, you can get, what are they called? Rio calls them anvil points, and they're for doing fine texturing. We can put them in a hammer hand piece or something like that. So that's the finest, sharpest point I have, but you could also take a burr and sharpen it down. Or one of the cool things I've seen done is you can go and buy at Joann's or something, you can buy a pack of cheapo big sewing needles, the ones that are for like needle point and stuff. I mean, rug point and stuff like that. And you grind it down and polish it, and you get yourself varieties of points for like 35 cents a pin kind of thing. So anything that gives you good control and close, as opposed to, there's a lot of tools out there that you can buy. These are great, but they don't have, I can't get in close enough to my tiny stones to really make the sharp point. But anything you have that has a good point to it. This is probably a little too wide even. You just want to get a very right around the perimeter of the stone mark. The other thing is, remember that these need to be 4mm or smaller stones, and you'll discover quickly that smaller can be a little fussy for its own. There's not a lot of material underneath it to make your prongs, so that gets a little harder. But if you try to go bigger, you'll see that your prongs are much more prone to break off. They won't hold your stone very well. Let's see, what else did I want to point out? If you want to highlight things, if you're following along on page 143, he has just below the drawing of the setting, which you can see is the Victorian style, a whole bunch of them crammed together. There's a sentence that says, also because all cuts are made within the boundary of the stone, multiple stones can be easily clustered within a small area. The all cuts are made within the boundary of the stone is that part I was just describing. It's not literally within the boundary, it's at the boundary. That's that lift that I said, if you don't go all the way to your line and just push your prong beyond it. So the prong is raising right at the outside of your circle. If you don't go that far out, your stone isn't going to fit. It's going to break off the prongs. But it can't go further than that. So all of our material that we're working with is under whatever size stone you have. The other thing is when he says further down to use beeswax or sticky wax for it and use the tiniest amount possible, he ain't kidding. Like, I am having a hard time putting a small enough dot of wax on these little stones so that it doesn't get mucky all over the place. But if you can, you want just enough to not even squish over the edge. All we're trying to do is use it to center our stone on the position we're trying to create here and keep it there. So I got something caught under there. I got silver dust in my wax. Bear with me. So I'm using the Wolf sticky wax that I've talked about. There's enough in one of those packs to last you and 5 of your closest jeweler friends for a lifetime. So
Are you gonna set 5 stones?
I'm going to set several stones today.
No,
we'll
I mean
see.
in that little piece where you are, each dot is 1 stone.
It is, but I could put stones in between them. I just wanted grids big enough that you guys could see them. So in truth, I should really be doing 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, and maybe even closer than that. But you are not going to be able to see like if I get in too close to the stitches, you won't be able to see the activity.
Why do you keep on freezing?
I don't know. My internet may be iffy. We've got good weather here today, so I'm not sure. Am I back?
No, now you're back. Yeah.
Okay.
That
All right,
usually
so-
happens to me every class, but it's only for a couple of seconds.
Okay. Well, pray to the internet gods and we'll be good. So I'm just centering this on the crosshatch that I already put in with that tiny amount of wax. And I've even got still too much wax on here because it's coming out the edges. So I just want to take some of that away so it's not invading my space. And did I miss anything that I wanted to specially point up? So on page 144 is where his text doesn't match the drawings, where he says with the scribe, trace a line around it, and he shows drawing the prongs out and everything like that. Whereas in the text on the left-hand column, he says to scribe, where does he say it? Place the stone in position, anchored against the, oh, right, we have to do the first 2 stitches. So where's the line that I'm looking for? Mode exposing, maybe it's on the prior page, but he says to only scribe half of it. Oh yeah. Just at the very bottom of page 143, place the stone in the desired location and hold it down firmly with your finger. Carefully scribe a single line across the section of the girdle closest to your scribe holding hand. Never scribe more than a single line because you'll end up with multiple lines and can't tell which is the correct one. But so he says, I find that I can usually trace about half the stone circumference. But he's calling that sufficient to begin with, because then he creates his stitches and then goes back and traces the other half. once the stone is in position against the first two stitches. So that was it's not quite the same as in the drawing in the text. So I'm going to trace half of the stone. And then I'm pulling up my stone and getting my wax out of the way. So I hope you guys can see that half moon I've created
Yes.
from here to here. And because I did my earlier cross hatching, even though you can see I've got an extra line in there, I now have indicators where I can put 2 of my stitches. So check that my graver is still sharp. It is.
And he also says two properly placed spaced stitches.
Right. Which is why I have the crosshatch.
Yeah, okay.
Right. So I also, you'll see that I put a dot in the middle for my center point. So my stitch is going to work from the dot, that is the center point of the stone. That's the max height I want my stitch, is from the center point out. And I'm going to go out to the half circle that I've done along one of my grid lines. And I'm still doing that wiggle, wiggle with a little bit of forward pressure, but not a lot of downward pressure, to try and make a tall, tall stitch. And yes, this is much harder on the graver ball than it is when it's on a non-moving surface. And I'm going to that line and then a tiny lift up at the end just to get it clear of the line. Okay, I'm going to do one. If I'm doing a 4, you could, the minimum you need is 3, but I'm going to do a 4 because it's easy to see and balance out. So I'm going to do 2 of my 4. Out again to that line that I scribed. Should be the same height because I started in the center. So I've now got 2. Let's see if I can shadow it a little bit so you guys can see these better. I'm not doing it any good because it's. You see those stitches a little bit now, and then I'll put the light back on.
Yeah. Yes.
So they're just 2 coming out. And now I get my little waxed up stone again. Oops, I got to straighten one of these up a little bit. When you're doing any activity on the stitch, do it slowly and gently. Like if I need to position this a little bit differently, I'm very, very slowly and carefully moving it a bit to uncurl it a bit. So right now, all these is stoppers for the stone with its little wax bit on the back. Pushing it down, and I'm firmly pushing my stone up against those 2 prongs that I've made, right? I want those to be the stopper on that side. So here and here, it's butted up against it. Now I come back with my graver, and I trace the rest of the circumference from where I left off, and I'm careful to not push down on the prongs themselves because that's an easy way to lose them.
And you still left the wax underneath that stone?
I did, yeah, because I want it solidly down in place. So I've just got the tiniest bit of wax in the way. I'm going to clear that out. Although I kind of find the sticky wax for some reason acts as a little bit of a lubricant. I would have expected the opposite, that it would gum up the works. Check my graver. My graver's a little less than ideally sharp. And I suspect professional engravers sort of sharpen their gravers like they're breathing, like that they wouldn't even be able to tell you how often they do the sharpening act. For me, I tend to forget until it's dull. And I should be doing it more frequently than I am. There you go. Okay, and once again, starting from my center point, and I have to be careful not to bonk the other one with my graver, because that's easy to do in this smallest space.
Oop, you're off screen.
Oh, sorry. super easy to knock into the graver on the far side below what you're working on. And again, remember, this needs to go just to that line and be beyond it when you push it up a little bit. So this may not have gone far enough. I may have to be a smidge further out. Okay, and then my fourth point from the center, again, watching out so that I'm not jamming up the other side.
But yet you still have to be at a 30-degree angle.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to try and get. So it's one of the reasons we don't lift the prongs all the way up. Oops, I just bumped into that far side prong. Hopefully I didn't flatten it too much. Not far enough. And lift. And now I've got to test and see if my stone still fits. And what I'll discover is that it wants to rest on some of the prongs as it does now. So it's a little shy this way. I didn't go far enough with this outer prong is my belief. So I'll see if I can correct it without killing it. Not always possible. Okay, so now I've got the little whoosh, floral like curls coming away from it with the prongs. And now I do the delicate work of carefully lifting those prongs into position. So again, I want to do gentle, slow activity to shift the prongs up the stone. And I'm going to do a little bit at a time. I still think of that north, south, east, west procedure to straighten things. And I'm still playing around with what burnisher I like best because they're so fragile that the big burnishers are sort of bulky and in the way. So I'm using a combination of that little pin vise thing. I'm worried this one's going to break off on me. That's the one that I flattened by accident when I was doing its partner. Oops. Let's get out of the way. So I'm still a little shy on this side is what I'm finding, and that's tricky. Because I dug too deep down in trying to recover the last update that I did to it. So I may have easier time giving myself a little more room the other direction, but we'll see. Prongs won't be the same height if I do that, but close. It's a little better.
So you're trying to uncurl them to what point? Where it breaks the curve, or?
To fully, they now become the prongs, so they have to curve back over the stone.
So you're unfurling them all the way, huh?
Yep, uncurling them and curling them the other direction ultimately a little bit. So they're pretty fragile.
I'm holding my breath.
Yeah, it's one of those, that's why you practice a boatload of times on it. So this one has a little notch in it from where I had to recover. And I don't know that it's going to look any better than it does. And this is the one that's weak. So now that I've got them up against the stone, I'm using the burnisher as a true burnisher and trying to rub them up over the stone. Yep, there goes one of my prongs. No, it just went sideways. So this one little prong wants to go sideways. It's going to break off, gang. So that one is shot. Boop. Can I recover from this? Maybe. I might be able to carefully peel these back enough and recarve that one prong, but likely not. That's why we have a practice plate. So we're going to see if I can carve another prong in place of that while still not ruining the others on the other side. A 3-prong would not have this challenge of, am I hitting the thing on the other side? All right, so I was able to make another prong. Is it strong enough to lift up and do its job though? I'm sure there's something about the way that you wiggle as you do these that makes it curl one way or the other, meaning left, you know, if it torques left or right. I find occasionally I need to encourage it straight, but this is the risk of, am I going to break it off if I'm straightening it? See if that holds. There's my stone. Oop, there it is. Keep losing my wax. There we go. Recovered prong is shorter than the others, so it's not quite doing what I want it to do, but we're getting it burnished. So that is set technically. It's not a very solid setting, but it's set. It's not fallen out. And it's just got those tiny little prongs holding it in place. You can see why you wouldn't want to go bigger than a 4mm. And if you can, go smaller, but it's hard to get enough material from that. I'm going to do a couple more of these. That's the gist of it, though. We're making the stitches and lifting them up to become prongs. Even if you hate this setting, it is phenomenal practice for our next setting, which is way cooler in my opinion, which is bead setting. Because in bead setting, we've got the support of having drilled down and set the faceted stone in. And what we're doing with our stitches is compressing them down into a small ball of material that then holds the stone in place. So you still need the stitches. You may as well practice on something funky while you're getting your stitch patterns down, because all the other things derive off of this. Questions about that before I start setting up the next one?
I think you just answered mine because I didn't really see the point personally. And I'm not casting aspersions on anyone else who wants to do this, but it just seems pretty fragile, especially if you sell stuff.
Yeah, what I have not done, and I'll confess because I don't particularly care for doing this technique, what I haven't done is a true Victorian boatloads of, say, 2mm cabs butted up against each other. to see how it changes its stability. Anytime I've ever seen this setting, it usually has some kind of a frame around it too. So they're stuffed in there so close that it's hard for anything to move, much less even if they had the stitches or didn't.
So Rachel,
Yeah.
what shape of graver you're using now?
This is the number 52. This is theoretically it's called a round, but as somebody pointed out on the list, I think Deborah Long was on, and she said, this doesn't look very round. It really doesn't. Like the onglettes look rounder to me than the rounds do.
So you're using the round?
I'm using the round, the number 52. Yep.
It's so confusing, these shapes and numbers. Okay.
They are kind of weird, and it doesn't help that John calls onglettes two names, onglet and anglet. Those are the same thing. They're not the same thing as this, though.
Okay.
And this is one of those things where you'll find gravers and setters each have their own personal favorites for what to use. If you hate gravers and you were to use only one, get comfortable with your flat graver because it'll be for doing bright cutting and things like that on the other settings. But if
And
you
what
decide you
number?
can't stand these,
What number is the flat?
that's the 42. That's the 42.
The 40s.
Yeah, or the 40s. Yeah, there's a range of them, but the 42 is the size that he said is his sort of generic middle of the road. The other setting that we'll be doing in the next chapter that is worth getting used to, for which you can enhance it with gravers, is the faux flush setting, where you're setting stones down and burnishing them into the metal. You can add detail to that with gravers, and the flat graver in particular is good for that, although the onglet is too. What you'll see is we're about to do the star settings after we do bead settings, and those are all sort of interrelated to how they can fit together. Other questions about this?
Yes,
Yes.
I'm looking at the pointed angle on the bottom of page 144, that scribe, and how pointed it is.
Yeah.
And which makes me think, if I want to grind down one of my scribes, then do I have to retemper it?
So the answer is it depends on how well you grind. If you grind and it doesn't
Oh,
change
okay.
color as you go, then no, you don't
Right.
have to retemper it.
Okay.
So yeah, just keep it quenched. That's true. That's true of your gravers themselves. As long as your gravers aren't changing color when you're changing their shape, then you don't have to retemper them. I will
Yeah,
do
that-
anything I can to avoid tempering.
Yeah, that's what I think. It looks so fragile that I can do it with my nail.
Yes. But again, it's, anything you can get to a sharp point. So you could put, like, I got these because I know that I can resharpen them by pulling them out and putting them in my flex shaft and running them against sandpaper, right? That's a super easy way to sharpen up a point. It's the same way that I'll make a point on if I'm making my own brooch pin, is that I'll spin it in the flex shaft against sandpaper and or files. And that if you're careful and you water it, if it gets too hot, it won't go awry. Any other questions before we try another one of these? I haven't lost all my stones. There we go. So once again, teeny tiny bit of wax. I still have way more than I need on here because it's squishing out. I'm going to pick one of my other, not enough for me to hold on to it. Let's see, number 2. I'm going to do another one off to the side, and let me see if there's going to be room for me to actually fit between, if I do decide to get brave and show you one close to each other. Yeah, in theory, I could do these as close as that or even closer if I get really good at it, right? But we're gonna skip between them for a while until we get more comfortable with the setting. And I've got my dot and my grid lines. Centering my stone. I'm scraping in the marks around 1/2 of it. Taking my stone away. Making sure my graver is still sharp. It is. And then I'm going to do first 1 stitch Again, it's a wobble, wobble, wobble forward, and I'm going to try and give you the side angle so you can see that it's a pretty steep, it's pretty shallow angle rather. I'm low to the material. And I'm going just to that ring that I marked out. Okay, so there's one. Going from the center again. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. This is a left, right, not, oops, not good. I took my stitch off. Okay, I've got two in there. I'm going to grab my stone with the wax on it still and figure out where I put the stone with the wax. There we go. Come on. Butt it up against the two stitches that I've already made. Oh, sure. Now I have not enough wax to hold it. Scrape the other side. Pull my stone away. Not very well centered. Yikes. It looks sketchy, but we'll see if it works. Oh, slid. Okay, I might not be sharp enough because that's twice that I've slid. See about resharpening.
No, are you using the India oil or the A1 or 3-1 or whatever?
The India oil fine side.
It's called India oil fine side.
So there's two sides to it, a coarse side and a fine side. I'm using
No.
Yeah,
only
she's
the fine
talking
side.
about the oil part, I
The
think.
oil, the
Oh,
oil.
what? Oh, I'm using 3-in-1 oil, which smells awful, but I didn't want to do everything spearminty.
I have that thing, but for some reason it has instructions for knives, not for gravers.
Knives and gravers are similar steel type, so that probably does the
Yeah.
trick.
Yeah, it looks like yours in a way. Red and dark in the bottom.
Okay, let's see if I can recover from that ginormous scratch I just put in. I'm starting to think that practicing with 3s might be a lot easier than practicing with 4s because I keep coming close to knocking the opposite side.
Rachel, would you tell me again how you would stabilize that without using that engraver's ball?
Oh, I would not have it in a ball at all. I would have it flat on the plate. But remember last time I put a block down here in
Oh,
front
yeah, okay.
and screwed it
Yeah,
down. I just couldn't get an angle that I knew you guys would be able to see well enough with that in the way.
thank you. Yeah,
And a vise doesn't give me enough movement, like a true vise. So I need somewhere in between, or I need to not have a camera.
Yeah,
looking
sure,
up.
make it our fault.
Pardon? Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
making
make it
I'm blaming you
our
guys.
fault.
Oh, dear.
Okay, these are really wonky because of that scratch and because I wasn't well centered, which is not surprising. Well, let's see if my stone will even come close to fitting or if I need to do some adjusting. I keep putting my wax down and it disappears on me. There we go. I put something on the wax, that's why. Oh, that fits better than I thought it would. Okay, so now we're going back to our tiny little graver devices and working a little bit of north-south so that we're gently, that one's gonna break on me. Gently peeling them up and starting to uncurl them. I find this setting really gets my shoulders, like I'm tight and tense throughout the whole process. Yeah. So I'm going to see if I can get close enough for you guys to see this indicator of a problem. And of course, I knocked into my other one while I was doing this one. Get that out of the way. Phooey. So let me see if I can zoom any further in. Nope, wrong way. Is that going to focus for us? Too close.
There. No.
There we
Yeah.
go. Okay, so what I'm seeing is right here, I have a little bit of a lift of the stone. It comes up from it. And it's because I didn't get this prong far enough out, right? So I have not gone all the way to my circle edge, or actually it looks like it's this one that I didn't get all the way out. And this one was doing fine, but it's now getting pushed out of the way. So it really is that snug but fully surrounded fit that we need. So I now need to back out of putting these prongs down again and try to recover. This side is already pretty weak from the dig in that I had to do. So we'll see if I can get a little more activity out of this one.
This camera angle is the best so far tonight.
Is it? Yeah, it's my expensive camera that I can do all the close-ups with. I moved it from the soldering bench because we're not going to do any soldering for any of these. So
Rachel, I am trying to do my engraver as I'm watching you, and I remember you're supposed to go back on the tip after you keep on sanding it, and that helped. You know,
so what do you mean back on the tip? Do you mean the knocking it in the wood?
No, I just went back.
Oh,
I didn't knock it
okay.
on the wood. And now finally I could feel that it's catching my nail.
Nice. Okay. So once I've got them up close, then I'm just managed to send the stone flying because I pushed too hard. This is why you guys are learning along with me. And this, yep, is going to go. I may be going to the 3-prong just because it's easier. So I don't think this one is recoverable. I'm going to go to another and start it. And I'm going to start out with sharpening.
You're using a 3mm, right?
Pardon?
You're using a 3mm stone?
I'm using the 4mm because I've always tried to go with the biggest stone I can do on screen for you guys, but that's the max that John says he would do with this. If I had any 3mm cabs, I might switch to them just to see if it makes it easier. But again, for me, tiny and fiddly are hard with my fingers. I'm gonna,
Oh, I thought you wanted to go bigger instead of going smaller, but you
no,
want to go smaller.
this is the biggest size stone he recommends for this setting. Oops, I'm out of focus, aren't I? Oh, no, it's just the light. What are we doing here? This is in a nice oh, it's focusing in front. That's what's happening. There we go. I'm going to break off the remaining prongs on this center one because they're just going to get in the way. That was the one that I knocked into as I was doing my second one. And then you guys can see the state of the prongs that I just cut. I'm now trying to burnish up and over. No, I'm losing us another one. Hang on. So it doesn't really matter how many perfectly matched straight stitches I've got when I'm doing my practice stitches, if I can't actually hold the stone with it.
Rachel, it's not really focus.
No? Okay, hang on, let me, the machine is trying to decide what it needs to focus on, so let me back out a little bit. And get some things out of its line of sight. Better?
Better, but I
Not
can't
too
see.
far away. Yeah,
Zoom
hang
in,
on.
it would be great.
There's a fine line with this between too close and just right.
Hey,
Is that too fuzzy?
that's okay.
It's okay,
okay.
I can see.
All right. So what I've done is I've managed to knock into these while trying to set this. And I still need a little bit more lift on one of these prongs. But I managed, in trying to correct it last time, I managed to go too deeply in on the cut. And I don't know that that's going to show well on screen, but you can see there's almost a hole dug in.
Yeah.
Because I did that second pass, and that's making it really hard to get a strong prong out of this because there's not material for me to lift in. So that's all about making sure you keep that angle down. It's, as I said at the beginning, it's really hard to correct a prong after you've started it and stopped it.
And what gauge is that sheet?
I used 16 gauge for this, according to John's recommendation. He said 16 or 18 gauge, because again, we're working on the surface of it. So it needs to be heavy enough to support things, but not so heavy that, you know, we're wasting material below it. There we go. This is, to me, one of the least interesting settings in terms of both visual look and act of making it. Like, it's just a little too tedious for me. But again, I'm excited by some of the ones that it teaches us, like it baby steps us towards.
Right. That's the important thing.
Yep. And remember, I told you that this stitch activity is super important for using as a tool to hold things in place when you're trying to match parts, like when we're doing a keyhole clasp. We use these stitches with this same level of precision that we have to get just to the outside of the ring. And that helps keep the dome of a matched pair lined up with what we need. So again, the technique, the skill is a good one to practice. There goes my far one. All right, gang, you're getting to see the failures that we get on our practice plate. Let me take all of these little guys down so that I'm not stabbing myself as I go. That doesn't feel any good. Sure, when I want to get rid of them, they won't fall off.
If you will give us the name of the town you live in case we need to call the EMTs.
Yeah, I think that's important. And Wendy, are you still breathing? Uh,
Barely, right?
uh-huh.
Goodness, goodness.
Okay. So 2 down, 2 knocked off. Third time's the charm. Let's see what we got. Maybe I'll go on one of the side parts instead of in the center. So I need a little bit, my tiny bit of wax. So small, it doesn't even seem to be there.
Do you think it has something to do with the fact that you're putting it on a ball and not?
I do. I do. I think I'm getting more wobble than I would if I were doing it flat. But again, you guys will like, I'll be down here and my hands will be in the way. I'll be down against the wood and my hands and the block of wood will be in the way. And I just couldn't get an angle that you guys could even remotely see. So I'm hoping this is still valuable to you guys to see me succeed and fail and then fail again.
Oh, I
It
love
is.
I love seeing you do that.
Oh, gee, thanks.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
You're not perfect.
Fail, Rachel. Fail more for us.
Well, I was trying to figure out how, is there a way to stabilize that ball? Can you put some of that jet set around the ball?
I thought about whether taping it would help, but the truth is I need to be able to move it occasionally.
Oh,
I
yeah.
need to move it when I don't want to move it.
Yeah.
So I was thinking whether leather would help. Let me see if I can maybe just putting some tape down enough to give it a little rough patch that'll slow it down at least. If you don't know, if you have a graver's ball and you don't realize, most of them let you lock in. Where am I? There we go. Lock in 2 directions on it, meaning you can sometimes rotate it and not have it slide. And you can, so I can lock here and I can lock here. Or I can leave the bottom one loose so that it spins on its base. I'm going to try doing this and see if that.
Put some shelf liner on, you know, that.
Yeah,
wall
I've got painter's tape and I think that might stabilize it a little bit.
a little bit.
So let's see if that helps while I'm doing this next one. I got to get back in position though. Nope, I need to zoom out a little more. So all I did was tape it down to its base and then it has a little bit of movement and I can rotate the whole thing. But we'll see. All right, so I'm gonna once again check and sharpen my graver. I gotta remember to go slow. No. And I'm gonna use the fine point marker and mark half of the circumference. I'm doing what John said not to do, and that's making a second line. All right, so once again, ooh, that is not centered though. Hang on.
Is that just blue marker pen or did you use that
Yeah.
architecture?
It's blue marker.
Okay.
Couldn't find my black marker, and blue seemed to actually show the lines for you guys a little more brightly on camera. I don't know whether it has better response to the focus or something. There we go. That's better. All right. So once again, the wiggle wiggle, and let's see. I've shown you. Is that enough of a side on for you guys to see what I'm doing with that back and forth wiggle? Is that a good angle?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm starting in my center and keeping a shallow forward wiggle wiggle movement. If I too shallow. If I go too deeply, then I'm getting that deep hole that I can't pull back out of if I need to correct. If I go too shallow, I slide across the top like I just did. This is the Goldilocks setting, just right. And even though you're not supposed to put a lot of pressure on this, it just uses all my shoulder and neck and arm muscles to hold it where I want it held. Come on, what are you stuck on? Woo! Well, there went that one. That was too much downward pressure. Wow, way too much downward pressure. Oh, goodness, guys, look at that gouge that I managed to make.
Wow.
Yep. Okay,
As
so
long
we're
as
trying
it's not
another
in your
one.
hands. Be careful.
It's not in my hands,
Yeah,
no.
really.
Sorry, I didn't mean to scare any of you.
Well, maybe we can just skip
Too
it.
late.
I don't want to skip this one. I want to get one that I can say is well set. Relatively speaking. Before we move on to that next one.
Smooth.
Slower helps, I realize. I was speeding up and I shouldn't have been. Don't break off. Okay, I've got my two. I'm going to put the stone back in against them. That one doesn't have the wax on it. Where's my waxed one? Okay, I'm going to scribe the other half. Stone out. Next week, I'll juggle chainsaws for you guys.
Will you light them on fire too?
Nah, I've got gas in my studio. I'm not that crazy. Slowing down helps, gang. I always need to remember that lesson. Also hitting a bump with this. It's making it a little challenging. Going to be far enough apart.
The tape seems to help. Yeah,
Say again?
the tape on the
It's
ball.
helping a
Is
bit.
that-
Yeah, it's not slip sliding out from under me quite so much. And where did I put my stone? Nope, still not far enough apart. Again, the ideal is to not have to do these corrections that I'm doing. It's to really get to your dots, and that's why those lines of practice going from point A to point B are super helpful. That actually looks pretty good. All right, so looking like there's no lift around.
Don't anybody
Room from
breathe.
each of them. Now comes the magic. Can we get them to burnish? Gently, gently. Come on, little guy. Straighten up. Sure. This. On the side, north, south, east, west, same as for other settings. Arg! Broke off a prong.
Rachel, do you have any tweezers that are sharp, sharp, sharp pointed
Maybe.
that might lift that out?
So the thing that's breaking them off is not the tool I'm using.
Okay.
The thing that's breaking them off is how I've made the prong. So there's, if I've done a pause, there's a weaker portion of the prong that comes into play. Or if I've knocked the other side while I was working it, that's created a problem. I think this is too deep. I'm not gonna be able to recover from this one. So I'm gonna scrape this one off. What are we at for time? 6 o'clock. I'm gonna try one 3-prong one so that I'm not knocking into my own prongs as much as I have been. And then maybe I'll cheat and bring over my other sheet of these that I've done successfully so you guys can at least see them. I can figure out where I put it. Okay, so the one that I started over here, I can use again, I think. I'm gonna ballpark my 3 points. Come on. Oops, I did too many sides. All right, so let's try one going off to the diagonal.
Almost there. You got it.
Should we go Rachel, Rachel,
Oh gosh,
Rachel?
I have a hard enough time talking with you guys and doing these tiny little things. The cheering
That's why we're
sessions
all,
don't help.
yeah. That's why we're all quiet here and watching. You.
There's one prong. And then let's go roughly a third of the way around.
Now, are you resting your elbow somewhere or?
No,
can't-
I've got them up in the air, which is part of the wobble. Or I've
Oh
got,
my God, then I
yeah,
will
I've got
never
my carving hand up in the air. Again, this is really designed to be done down flat where you got some support.
Mhm.
Okay, so there's 2 of our 3 points. Let's put our stone back in that one. There's too much gunk on that stone. And mark where we want to do our circle. This guy out of the way. You are 3rd. This time it's going to be in a direction that the others don't get knocked into, in theory. Yeah, there's a stitch on that one. Not quite.
Great angle.
Yeah, any of these corrections that I'm doing, though, mean a risk that the prong is going to be weak at that restart point. So there we've got now a 3-pronger. Let's see if it survives the lifting up of the prongs. I'm going to do this with the burnisher because the burnisher is a little more curved the way I wanted it. And I may go out and buy some smaller stones and show you guys this with smaller activities, just because I think that may be part of why I'm fighting it so hard. Just doing a little bit at a time. And then bringing it up. So now I'm just trying to get the last of it burnished down to the stone. And I'm going to say that's as good as we're getting today. This is rough, man.
Wow.
So it's
All
attached again. 3 prongs is definitely easier than the 4 because half of my problem was that I kept knocking my other one and weakening it. And in theory, if you do 3-prong and you do them close together, what you're doing is creating like a little 6-prong combo. So you would set your next one with one of its prongs starting at the between 2 prongs in a style that was, so they create sort of a little cross hatch between themselves. Let me zoom in as close as I can get for you guys to see that one before we move on to other things. And that was too close. Let's see. I'm gonna get in focus, maybe. Gonna focus. It's gonna try to focus. Oh, there we go. That's not bad for showing you the focus of the prongs.
It just seems so delicate for what
It is.
I mean.
It's really fragile. So there's our 3rd prong. which is the minimum we can get away with. And you can see one of them's a little shorter than the others. Because I had to do that second cut in. But yeah, this is a rough one, gang. So practice, practice, practice. Look at that scratched up plate though. Woo! Got all kinds of practice problems in there. Let's actually do that. Let's take a little bit of a look at the challenges that we created, or that I created. You guys just got to watch. That
We call
created
that texture.
Pardon?
We call that texture.
Right. So you'll see what looks like I did a lot was towards the end of my prong. I really dug in deep. Those are usually, I'm betting those are the ones that I was doing a second cut because it was hard to get a grip under the setting. So you can see that there's a prong on each of the screw up positions here, to a lesser extent on this one, which I think was my second one, where I really gouged in, and that was too much down and in and not enough forward and in, because I was trying to pick it back up again. So maybe my lesson for you guys on this one is err on the side of too far outside of your circle edge at first until you get the feel for it. So you're doing one full stroke. I kept trying to be right at my line and then doing my little lift. And I ended up having to recut a few of them. This was the one where I recut everything when I was trying to correct once I knocked it off. We have a couple. So this line here was a really deep gouge that was when I tried to repair from the first one that was too shallow, which made this slide across cut. And while I wouldn't say this one is just right, it's the closest that we came to having good, solid answers. So this is a why we have practice plates exercise. Oops, did I move out of screen on all of that? Those are our challenges on this one. Questions about that messy stuff?
Why?
Yeah,
Right.
it's delicate.
Fragile is more like, it's not just delicate, it's fragile. There's delicate
I'm
and there's
delicate.
delicate and breakable.
Yes, like me.
Okay, any other questions on this one? Are you
My
gonna
arm
run out of
hurts for
practice,
you.
right? Pardon?
My arm hurt and
Yes.
shoulder hurt for you.
Yeah, it's not a fun one. Let me see if I can find, I think I put my other practice plate aside so that you guys could see it. If I can remember where I put it. And I do not have it out, so I'll have to find it for next time.
You were also working higher than you normally do, so
I am
that's
working,
good.
yeah, way high up because I'm up off the, oh, there's my practice book. Did I have any? I didn't have any of these settings, but I think only the one that I showed you guys on the last video that had my attempt for bigger trillion stones. So you can do this, you don't have to do this with round. That's one of the cool things about this setting, is that it can actually be done with other shapes, but it is designed purely for cabs. So with that in mind, let's switch gears to the next setting, which is the bead setting. And bead setting is done with faceted stones. And so they have a little bit more support underneath them because they also have a drill in point that we've done. So I'm gonna switch my plates out to the other style of plate. Oh, but I need some room to drill. Let's see. I'll put this up on pegs. And bead setting is the faceted version of this, and we're on page 145 at this point. And we need heavy gauge sheet for this. He doesn't actually give us a gauge in this. And interestingly, his drawings imply that he doesn't mind the stones coulette poking through the back of it. But when he's talking about this setting, that's an absolute no-no. So I would go with a gauge that's thick enough that when your faceted tiny stones are set into it, they are not poking through the back. I'm using, what did I end up using? I think 12 or 14 gauge, but let me double check. Nope, if my gauge didn't fall over. I think it's a 12 gauge that I'm working. And I'm going to use fairly small stones. What's I going to use for these? There we go. I was going to use these smaller simulated sapphires that are 3 millimeters. Pull those out so you guys can see. So I did a separate plate for this. I've got it because I'm doing it in my little jig. I've got a couple of risers there because I'm going to be drilling down and I don't want to catch my my graver's ball with the drill. And I'm going to be using manufactured so that they're pretty good. Oh, I don't have to go that small. Let me see. I think those will probably be a good stone for this. So they are faceted. They have to be for this setting. And I think these are 3 millimeters, but I'll check them because we're going to need to match our drill bits anyhow. Don is one of the few teachers I've taken classes from that uses flame or bud burrs. They go by both names. So he was the one to introduce them to me, introduce me to them. Oops, I'm still in inches. Why am I still in inches? That's awful. Lie down. And so the truth is, if you don't have any flame or bud burrs, you can sort of scoot past that step and just be more careful with your, theoretically, these are 3 millimeters. You can be more careful with your setting burrs for this. But the flame burr creates a nice track for the stone to rest solidly in the hole. So our steps, as you can see on page 145, are that we're going to make a center point. I pre-marked all my center points and did a little punch at the center of each. And then we're going to drill down in progressively larger drill bits. And he's very big on start with a small bit and work your way up. So let's see what I got. A little big for a starting point. Not too bad. So I'm starting out with a 63 to drill holes in, and I need to switch to my other flex shafts. And I'm going to do several holes drilling at once, just so we don't have to go over those steps each time I do it. If we set more than one of these, but this is another one that, yeah.
Clarify that the bud burr is the same size as the stone.
The bud burr is, oh, he doesn't say, does he? He uses approximates for us here. He's saying when it approaches the right size of hole, use the bud burr to widen it. It certainly shouldn't be bigger than your stone. And with bud burr, it's not quite the same as going all the way down with a setting burr, because a setting burr, you get to that maximum size as soon as you hit beyond the angle of the, I'm not using my words well. Let me draw this one.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, the bud burr has the flare, so you can have a little bit more management of it, even if you've got an oversized burr, just so that other people get what I'm talking about, because I'm not sure.
Yeah, I like the drawings.
Oops, I got to zoom out for drawings though. Wrong way.
There.
Okay, so when you're using a setting burr, as soon as you hit the point at which it creates the little ledge that we're counting on, you're committed. That's the width that you've got, right? When you're using a flame burr or a bud burr, you've got a taper that's gentle, so you could just go that far down and not have the hole be committed. Whereas these are one size and you're done. Like it's either the right size burr or not. That's what I was getting at with those. So the flame burr, even if you only buy one moderately sized flame burr, if you get good control with your flex shaft, you could just go lower on a smaller stone for the flame portion of it, and then switch to your more calibrated setting burrs.
Oh, okay. So you don't use that flame burr all the way down. You don't fit the
You don't
stone.
have to. Right.
Okay.
Right. So what I'm saying is buy one or two of these, buy all of the sizes of the setting burrs. And this is what we need for really tiny stone calibration, because it does matter. It really makes a difference. If you're on the size you need or a little bit less than the size you need, you're in good shape. But anything higher, and you have to find another stone is what it comes down to.
So
Okay.
the flame burr then is kind of like a ball burr where you're starting the
Yes.
hole.
Yeah,
Okay.
and if you needed to, you could even use a ball burr. It's just what he's having us do with that is it gives a gentler shape to. So the first act is it sort of, we've got our hole down the center, but it gives a gentler curve than the roundness of a ball burr. Like a ball burr is always going to be a full round, and so your stone is always going to have gapping where the round is, whereas a flame burr is more likely to traverse the side of the stone a little bit. And then when we do our cut in, what we're doing is taking a notch out. That is, how does it rest in that curve, right? So that series of 1, 2, 3. Do I believe you can fudge some of those? Absolutely. If I were to fudge, I would skip the flame burr step. If I don't have a flame burr, if I only have setting burrs, I would not skip the setting burr step on this one, because it'll lead to crunchy stones, because they're going to have pressure on the wrong parts of the stone when they're setting. So to start, I'm just going to do an initial drill of a few of these holes, making sure I don't right away pick to be right over my my posts on this thing. I did. Oh, you know what? I need to snap this and bring it down a little bit. I told you guys in other sessions that the smaller the drill bit, the less you want sticking out. So I'm going to snap off about 1/2 inch off the end of the burr. When it's, I mean, out of the bit, the drill bit. When it's this small, I can usually just do it with a pair of pliers in my hands. Usually, but not always. Yeah, there you go. Just don't mix that steel up with your other stuff. So what that does by giving myself less material sticking out of the end is it makes it less likely to wobble and or snap. Makes it a more stable drilling position. Switch to goggles so I can look at this up close, if I can figure out where my goggles went. Remember, especially when you're doing small drilling, to every once in a while lift back out so that it can clear the metal that's getting caught in there. I find I'm super impatient with especially small drills that I feel like they should be drilling faster. And really, we just got to let the drill bit do the work. So whenever you start seeing those little threads coming off of it, just lift back off to give it a chance to clear. The grub out of there every once in a while. I'm just gonna get a bunch of these drilled so that I can have them prepped. Pushed my drill bit back in. Hang on a sec. Either that or I snapped it off, one or the other. Nope, I just pushed it back in. Oh, maybe I did snap it off. It's telling me that one's done. It doesn't want to do any more. Okay, so then we move up a little bit and I'm getting closer to my 2mm holes. Probably step up a few more steps than that. Let's see.
So are you using a 1mm, then you're gonna use this 2mm drill bit?
So I'm not leaping up that much at a time. I'm going up small amounts. So I was using this
63.
size and I'm moving up a little bit at a time. And I never want to get bigger than my stone, which we said was a 3mm. So I'm a ways away from that. I can probably step up a little more than this at a time, but let's see if this one does okay. And I'll step up bigger on the next one. I did lose part of my bit in that. Okay, and let's leap up a little bit more. This isn't too big. Where did my stone go? Oh no. Get my stone off.
Is it right behind the thing?
Nope. Well, I managed to drop it somewhere. That's okay, I've got more. If you do switch out stones, make sure that you are checking that they are in fact the same size. When they are manufactured, you can often assume they will be. That's my similar sized stones. But not all stones that you find are well calibrated. Okay, so I'm still bigger than my stone, I mean smaller than my stone by a fair amount. I'm gonna swap in. That's the one that I have the drill bit stuck in. I didn't finish drilling. That gives us a few. And one more step up. Have another one step up. Let's see what I've got for bits. Yeah, No, I only have steps down. Let me see if my other bit kit has something better. Okay. I'm now on a 3 millimeter stone. I'm now doing a 2.34 millimeter straight bit rather. Hang on a sec. It does not like that. Sorry, gang, my Fordham is giving me grief. May not be able to get to this size with this flex shaft. Ugh, yuck. All right, we're switching to the flame burr, even though we're not quite big enough on the regular hole. It'll size up as we go. So what do I need? I need my box of burrs. And I am looking for a flame burr that is not bigger than my stone, but not much smaller than it. Let's see what we got here. This is bigger by a little bit, so I can, my choices again, I can either just go part way in, or I can try to find another flame burr, which I think I have. So I'm going to try that first. Going to the new toy that is not quite as good at holding burrs as I would like it to be. I call it my Dalek of burrs, if you're any Doctor Who fans out there. Old school. I think good size.
That looks so punky.
It does. It unfortunately it needs a little bit better grip on the burrs. Like it needs something foam inside of it or something to hold it. Okay. Now we've got the flame burr and we're drilling down into these holes that we've made to get some curvature on them. And getting comfortable with these changing of the burrs back and forth to get just the right combo is at the heart of all the rest of our setting. Well, all the rest of our faceted stone setting. Because there's two approaches. You can either have a lot of different size stones so that when you screw up your drilling, you have something to move to, or you get really good at making sure you've got exactly the right set of burrs. And if you find calibrated stones, you're in great shape because then you can create a set of burrs. You can know what your drill bits are and know what your burrs are that you're going to use for exactly that set of stone. And you can make a little packet of them and always repeat what you're doing. But again, stones don't always come well calibrated. So we kind of are SOL on that one. So I've got a few places I can set. And then my next step is now to actually, this is the most precise I have to be, is I have to actually choose a setting burr. And John likes his to be, I can never remember whether he likes them to be just at the size or just below. He likes,
I think he says just exactly the size.
yeah, he likes, and I never have the fortune to find the exact match. Where did I put my glasses? There we go. I'm always, when in doubt, err on the tiny bit smaller version of your cutting burr if you don't have, of your setting burr rather, if you don't have a perfect fit for it. And we are looking for setting, not heart. So I'm looking for something that is close to my, now I really need to know my exact size stone. .97 millimeter. So I'm looking for 2.97. Let's see where we are there. 2.71. 2.96. I don't know that I'm going to get a better match than that because they don't go up in 0.01 increments. So I'm switching out the flame burr. I'm putting in my setting burr. And this is the same basic set of steps we'll use for flush setting too. We'll just take it a little deeper. Oops, burr life. This is important that you go as straight up and down as you can. Being very straight up and down on my little graver ball here. And you're going to want to check how your stone fits at some point. If you don't lose yet another stone, Rachel, where the heck did I manage to fling it? There we go. It's the one I've been drilling. So that's actually about where we want it to be. So I don't know, does he tell us details about how deep he likes them set? Location. And he likes the stone to be just below. So I probably need to go a smidge lower. What I've got here, and this is where you start getting into, you should wear your goggles or, I mean, your close-up glasses or whatever. What you're looking for, you need to have the stone be just below the lip of metal that you've got. And so your fingernail can sometimes catch it and tell you that you're there. I'm going to go like 2 or 3 spins a little deeper than I've got right now. Okay, maybe that was 4 spins. Brush out all the extra dust and crud because that can make a difference. And in a perfect fit, you might even hear a little snap as it sets into place. This is still resting up a little bit. A little bit more. That little snap of the stone going in place is going to become your happy place eventually, because what you want when you're doing flush setting is for that snap to have it happen every time. I am just, maybe I'm there. Let's see. Yeah. Got all the dust in there. Maybe I'm there. Yeah, there we go. All right, let me zoom in so you can see how close to the surface I am. If we can get that close. Phallic out of the way. Come back. Where did we go? This is like a video game.
Right.
All reversed
right,
for
Liz.
me. There we go. So you can see how it's just under the surface at the edges. There's still a little bit showing above because of the table of the stone.
The
But it is
girdle is
really-
just under the edge. Yeah.
Pardon?
The girdle is just under the lip, right?
The girdle is, yeah, like I can catch my fingernail and probably if I worked at it, I could flip it out, but not much below that. Like there's no level low. So it's just at that point. And then we need to go back and sharpen our gravers because we're going to go to the cutting stage of things. And I do have this marked out with the positions I want. Yes. So we are using our number 52 graver. And instead of working from the center out, we're now working our way in. And we're not using the same angle as we were doing before. Our goal in this case is to actually do a little bit of push in and lift, right? So what we're trying to make, if you see on page 147, we're trying to make a little bit of a push in right at the outskirts of each of my crosshatches on here. So I'm going to aim for, he says, 3/4 of a millimeter to 1.5 millimeters out. So I'm looking for a starting point sort of there. If you want to be really nice and precise, you can make yourself a little circle around it and mark it out, or you could use your calipers and mark your points to be more precise. But I'm going to mark these up so you guys can actually see where I'll be starting. Right. And then we're pushing forward on our material. And let me see, there's a couple points I wanted to point out. So one thing he notes is that 0.75 to 1.5 range, the smaller the stone, the smaller the gap you want. So 0.75 is for very small stones and 1.5 might be for larger stones. I don't think he actually gives us a range to be set this style. Does he say earlier in it? He does not. He doesn't tell us what our maximum size is on this. But it can get bigger than what I've got for sure. And then the other thing he points out is that if you're holding it in with only 2 beads, one, you're going to want to do that on smaller stones, not bigger stones. And 2, they have to be absolutely 100% across from each other in order to hold the stone in. Because just like any other setting we've got, if we don't have points of contact, if there's a wider gap that's a point of contact on one side than the other, then the stone can slide out of that wider gap. So if you're only going with 2 beads, be really, really precise with your setting. He also he says this doesn't include, like, we're not doing a push in and scrape and rock. Instead, what we're doing is embedding it down and then rocking it in the same spot. So we're using the same movements we were doing. We're just not going forward in the course of it. What we're doing is we're creating deep down gaps. Those things that I pointed out as bad in the last setting is what we're aiming for in this setting. And what else did I want to point out on this? V-shaped. Oh, yeah. And then at the end of it, we're going to actually intentionally lift it forward to create that final push. So what I'm doing now is I'm picking, I'm going to check my sharpening because that's always key. Still sharp. I'm definitely not still sharp enough for this. So we're going to sharpen slowly. Gotta remember the slow part. Gravers are one of those things where you don't want to buy the cheapo brands. I have made that mistake. They won't hold a sharpen. The generic brands. GRS is obviously the top of the line. Valorb makes good ones. But don't buy generic, already handled gravers. That looks like it's a little better. All right, so I'm going to start at my 1.5-ish, and I'm going to go in, and I'm still doing the wiggle, but I'm doing it right in place. I'm not close enough yet. There we go. So I'm doing this wiggle to basically puncture a hole, not puncture, but push a hole down, and I'm forcing metal forward ahead of it. So you'll notice that I'm at a much steeper angle than I was as I go up to create that push. I probably didn't go far enough forward though. So there's a little nubby bit. I'm going to highlight it in a different color so you guys can see what I'm talking about, because these are tiny. See the little red tip on that? I don't know if you can see it. It's tiny. right here.
Yep.
So
Nubby bit.
that's the little knob that I'm building that's going to become our bead, but it's got to go a little bit deeper up and forward. I think this is a small enough stone. I may have been a little too far away because you really want your bead getting close to the lip. And if you were doing this with magnifiers, or if I could get you guys much, much closer, you would see it sort of like a bug tunneling underground. You'll see it pushing the metal upward into a little hillock. And that's what we're aiming for.
It's a mole.
It's a mole. It is literally a mole under the metal. You're making a little lift tunnel. That one makes me a little happier than the first one. Yeah, I am getting my upper arm workout today. This is a lot. Okay, so only my very first one was a little too far away, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to correct that, but we'll see what I can do. Think a little forward. Yeah, that makes me happier. All right, now I'm going to try and zoom in super close for you guys to see if we can get a sense of these dots, because the next step is the beading part. Oop, too far. Oops. Well,
To your right.
there we go. Focus. Nope, not quite. Come on, focus for me. Is that gonna focus? No, it still needs to be a little further away. There we go. Okay, so you see those lifts that I've got all around it? I got a lift there.
Yeah.
Lift there, and a lift there. Those little bits of metal are what's going to hold this stone in place, because we're now going to take our beading tool, and I guess we are now on page, where are we? Page 148, the beading tools. And the beading tools come in a set usually. So this is my set of beading tools. Variety of sizes, and just like when you are using a cup burr on the end of something, you want to have one that just barely fits over whatever you're beading, and these are high polished on the inside, and they create a little dome out of the material that we have. So let me pick one that looks viable.
But a beading tool is not the same thing as a cup burr.
No, very much not, but there are a lot of people who make their beading tools out of their cup burrs when the cup burrs are dead, because you can grind them down and polish them. So they're much higher polish than a typical cup burr. And there's a special setting. I mean, there's a special handle that comes with them that has a little bit more grip than usual to get those in there. And we're just going over one of the beads. Oop, I may have too small. Hang on, I gotta pull this out. This was smaller than, I mean, these are larger beads than I thought. You do have to use a little muscle to get them out of the handle. So I'm using tweezers and, pliers and a lot of pull. What do I want? I want bigger than that. So let's see. This time I test it before I stick it in the handle. Too big. That looks like that's gonna do. And this is, so some people that I've learned this from, they say, wax your beading tool, others don't. I don't think John asks us to. No, he does not. And so this is a straight up and down on top of the bead. Let me pick one that's easy. And then it's a rock and roll. It's a rock and rotate that we're doing. And we're literally burnishing using the inside. Am I in screen? I am in screen. We're literally burnishing that material that we brought up into the prong down and into a nice little bead that pushes up against the edge of the stone. If your beading tool is hitting the stone itself, you cut your bead a little too close. What we're aiming for is having a nice bead that lands right at that lip that we put the stone under. And it doesn't take a whole lot. It'll take a while to get really good at cleaning them so that they're nice and consistent bead shape. This one may be a little close to the edge.
So that you add the wax.
I just did a little bit of burr life on it just to give myself a bit of give. And so it's a rotate and a push down all at once. And let me actually take away some of the marker around this because you're going to see the shine of the beads a little better. Because this is one of my favorite in terms of, holy cow, suddenly it's something. See those beads?
Yeah.
Yes,
Holding
looks
that
good.
stone in.
Nice.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. And you can put more beads around. Like I did sloppy opposite sides from one another, so I could make up for that by putting a few more beads in here. But that's all there is to this setting. And it's all about, oops, sorry, I'm out of screen. Where am I going? There we go. Come on, in screen. It's all about making sure that you're using the right burrs at the right times to the right depths. This is all about measure, 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 do your step, measure, 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 do your step. And then that stitch that we've learned, which is controlling how much metal you're pushing forward. In this case, again, we're pushing it upward and in instead of sliding it across at the steep angle that we did for the other stitch. But that's all there is to it, right? And then you can do decorative beading all the way around. You can do, again, you can get away with a minimum of 3. John says you can do 2 as long as you're precisely opposite. That makes me nervous, but I suppose. And this is another one of those settings where people do them butted right up against each other. So you'll see that a lot in high-end jewelry where there's bling, like diamonds get set alongside of things, a stack of them all pairs. I personally really like the look when it's like 1, 2, 3, so that they're sort of set between each other. We'd have one set that goes like this, and one set that comes in between, domino style. But you got to get really, really precise with your drilling and cutting and beading. And when you get super good at this, you can go watch all those great videos of people who are always going to be much better than I ever will be at beading, where they use the same bead as the side setting for 2 halves. So your stones get so close together that this bead acts on both of them.
I was just going to ask about that.
Yeah, so the trick on those, as I understand it, having never truly successfully done this myself, there's my little drawing board. Where did I put it down? There we go. The trick on this one is about how you position your beads relative to your circles, to your stones. So if we've got a stone, a stone, and a stone, it's about coming in for your bead so that you're creating it here and here so that we're not fighting. Like if we were doing them spread apart, we might come in from the sides, right? And create our beads. But it's about making sure that your bead stitch part happens from an angle, whether it's the inside out or the outside in, that that it's eligible to, you know, it's smack dab in the middle between the two of them. And then it's also about how do you precisely fit all of your stones together. So again, this is another one that John Mazzaros does a lot, and I've talked about watching him, even though he doesn't answer questions. You just have to get what you get from his visuals. He does a lot of these in his fancier rings, and what you'll see is that he drills all his holes precisely before he goes on to the next step. Although he's also doing one where he's cutting in with burrs to make the sort of prong-like things that he then beads down. So a side view of that, you'll see this often on band rings where they drill the holes in. So if we were looking inside of it, we would see this kind of a thing ready for the stones. And then you drill to make prongs out of the metal. So you're cutting away material. That
Are
is
you
some out of screen.
are you putting the stone, do you place the stones before you set those beads? All
The
of them,
thing
and
that I
then,
just described with the ring, with them set like this,
yeah,
I don't think so, but I literally have never done this myself. This is one of those settings that if you want to get good at these, the New Approach School in Tennessee has a bench setters, like a week-long or 2-week-long program. It's ridiculously expensive. I truly hope to do it someday because it sounds so cool. But remember that in old school jewelry work, stone setters are completely different than jewelers. And so they spend their lives learning how to cut these seats and how to set the stones in them. And so this is one of those ones that you can do. I think maybe it's Luke Walker, maybe it's Rio or somebody. They have pre-made bands that you can practice with that are in brass that you can cut down.
I took a stone setting class from Jerry Louis once, who's from Toronto, and he is a master stone setter. And he said, "Don't ask me anything about the metal. I don't know anything about the metal. I just set the stones. I know nothing about making jewelry. I just set stones."
Right. We do have time. If you want me to repeat that, because I've got other holes drilled, I can. So you can see that one more time. I'm seeing at least one yes, and then we'll do our wrap up and our show and tell. Because if Deborah's on, I know she has the holder for sharpening your graver, which I want to see in action. Okay, so let me go back and mock us up again. So we've got, I gotta find another stone of same or similar size. And where did I put my calipers? Oh, goodness, guys, my bench is messy today. Messy. It looks like a similar size stone. Double check, even though they are simulated and therefore supposed to be the same. That looks pretty good. So I can use the same drill bit I've already got set. And let's work on with this one because it looks like it's a little bit set up for me. Again, critical step is that it be as upright as possible and that you check it often because you don't want to go too deep with your stone or else the bead won't really hold it there. I'm pretty close.
Rachel,
Yep.
I get frustrated that sticky wax, the wolf wax, leaves gunk on the stone.
Residue, yeah. So I always have my isopropyl alcohol handy because it'll melt off with that.
No, thanks.
Yeah, it's one of the steps I do right before I'm ready to actually set is I wipe down the stone. Oh, so close. A couple more twists. Setting burrs, by the way, really worth spending the money on a good set. And no matter what, you won't have the size you need. I think that's just a law in metalsmithing, is that you won't have the size you need. Okay, so once again, if I can find where I stashed my number 52 graver, my round graver that isn't so round, I'm going to double check and sharpen a bit. Slow and steady. It's not catching well yet. Oh, yeah, no, maybe not. A little bit more. Okay, and again, this is a steeper cut in from just outside the stone edge. So we're angling in. We're still doing the wobble wobble, but we're not trying to go forward as much as we are trying to go in, creating a little mole tunnel. I like that analogy. Sure, I've got a bit of a bead. I want to go a little bit further in though. One. Work the opposite side. You'll notice if you look at these in up close, you'll notice that your beading is actually squishing the metal around the stone in, meaning there'll be a slight push of the circular shape wherever you're creating your bead, and that's a good thing because that's part of what is holding the stone in place. If you're doing this and your stone is trying to pop out, it means you use too big of a burr, and you need to either move your stone up for this one or start over again. Because the stone should be setting comfortably during this process and not trying to leap out. Get alignment a little better across. Okay, I've got my 4 little quadrants. Again, I could do more. In fact, what the heck? Let's do a few more on this one just to see how it looks. And you'll discover pretty quickly that if you're not being consistent in your creation of the little beads, that it'll show when you go to polish them up. Some will look bigger and some will look smaller. Okay, a little beading tool. So if the digging was the mole, we're basically now shoving the dirt back down into the mole. Oops, I hit my stone and popped it out, which probably means undercut. Let's see if I can salvage it. I may not have cut deeply enough. Maybe I managed to save it. Nope, it's pushing back on that side. This stone really wants to pop up. Okay, guys, I did not drill this deep enough. I'm gonna see if I can recover. I'm not sure this will work, but I'm gonna try to drill a smidge deeper. Set the stone further in. I'm probably gonna have to recut my, I'm gonna have to push my beads back up a little bit, so it may or may not stick. Let's look further down. Check these beads that I already started beading. When you do 8, it kind of looks like a little daisy. Wipe that down a bit so you guys can see it. And there we go with a slightly sloppy set of 8 beads. Again, I could toss probably a couple beads in there to sort of fill in the gaps. Oop, that's not even close, remotely close enough for you guys to see, is it? Focus, maybe. Focus, no. There we go.
Yeah.
So if you do these fully, like I could do a little bit more work with the beading tool to get them a little more polished up. And then if you're careful and light touch, you can use my favorite, that Swifty wheel, to do a little bit of careful polishing right around because it won't hurt the stone. Just to bling it up a little bit further. These look really good when you've done a little bit of blackening around them so that it really pops the polish of each of the beads. But yeah, so that's the gist of that. And you can play around with variations on the theme in terms of how many you set and so on. And our next setting will be a version of this in which we then add a star carved in with the rest of the gravers that we're using. So we'll be using the 42 and the 4 for that. Deborah, I don't mean heart burr. I do mean an actual setting burr. You could use a heart burr for this, but it's a little harder to get the straight down seat that we're cutting into the curve from the flame burr. So John is recommending first a flame burr and then a setting burr. So the straight angled ones that, you know, have the point at the bottom, as opposed to the heart ones that have this kind of a thing. We're not trying to get an undercut like we do when we're doing certain other settings. So,
Rachel,
questions,
go-
gang?
Could you go with that blackening again? I didn't quite get the blackening.
Oh, so when you, well, I can actually kind of show it with the, with what I've got for marker. It's acting as a little bit of a blackener. But if you just polish this, it doesn't, the little speckles don't speckle as much. So what I'm talking about is come in and do a little paint on a little of your favorite blackening agent. Mine is Gosiba. And where's my Sharpie marker? Just paint in a little bit of blackening around the beads and then burnish away above it. And the blackening gets in the circle. So there's a little in cut around each bead. And then when you polish the tops, which I'll try to do here without taking out the other stuff, it sort of pops the little circles around each bead.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Sorry, it would look a lot nicer with polish and with Gosiba or Black Max or Jack Black or whatever your 75 variations on the theme.
But it's getting late, right?
Right.
I got the idea.
Any questions on that or on any of the other settings today? I take these off, I guess. Cool. All right. And Deborah is showing us the tool for the angle. This is the device that is drawn in John's book, but we don't have any actual pictures of it. Deborah, have you now successfully used it to get your angles in? I don't know if Deborah's on camera or not, but
I have that and it's crooked.
it's
So
crooked.
Yeah, and I read a lot of the reviews. Some of them come in crooked. So the screw doesn't go straight into that little V slot.
Huh.
It goes sideways. So you either have to machine a new hole for this. I forget it. I got the Crocker one.
Okay.
The what one?
The Crocker one. It's the silver one that
What's the brand name?
Crocker. Go on Amazon and click on Crocker Graver Sharpener.
Like Betty Crocker.
Betty Crocker, but leave out the Betty. Crocker, Crocker Graver Sharpener. And
I
it's
have,
like,
I think is it this
yes,
one?
that's it.
Oh my goodness. That's extra fancy. And then GRS, of course, has one that goes with all of their tools, but I don't know if that fits other gravers or not. I've never seen it up close. Anybody have a GRS graver sharpening tool?
Yeah. No.
No,
Yeah.
I don't.
Okay. They're also much more expensive because they're GRS, which
Yeah.
by the way, if you get really excited by graver settings, GRS also has classes that are nothing but
Yeah.
how to use their engraving equipment. And they're supposed to, like, that's for if you want to learn how to do gunsmith engraving and you want to do you know, handles to pots and things like that. It's amazing, and I don't have the patience for it or the
I'm
hand
not
strength.
good at that.
Okay, any other questions before we pop to show and tell? All right, who's got stuff this time? Anybody?
Carmen.
We're always counting on Carmen to have something. Anybody else?
I have something to show, but not show and tell. Does somebody
Okay.
have some? If somebody has show
We
and
can-
tell, let them go
We can
first.
count on you, Carmen. Thank you.
What have you got? What have you got to show?
Well, I mean, I have something I can show also, but I mean, it's sort of show and tell.
Okay. All right, let's go to the show and tell first, and then
Okay. I made these earrings. I don't know if you can see them a while
Ooh.
back.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
with a faceted stone.
Yep.
It's charoite, and so I used amethyst. And I like them, but you know, and I did tube setting.
Yeah.
I rarely use faceted stones, so I wanted to use faceted stones. And then I thought, you know, I don't really care for it that much. So, I mean, I like it, but there could be more. So I decided to do
Double up.
doubles.
Oh,
Yeah, you gave it
Pretty.
more.
they're beautiful.
I like it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
Very nice.
just so Rachel doesn't think she's the only one that made a mistake. Fortunately, this top one is not a great tube setting, which is fine because I forgot to put the earring back on before I set it. So,
Oh, no.
but it was
So-
good practice, so I'll just do it again.
The other thing that you could do is because it's not well set, but it looks like it's a tall tube, is you could
Yeah, I can
potentially
cut it
peel
too.
it out and trim it down a little bit and then reset it.
Yeah, well, the bottom one is a little high.
Yeah.
So I don't want to make this too shallow. So
Yeah.
I'll just make it, I'll just do it again because it's good practice. And
It is.
I actually kind of like tube setting.
Good.
So
I will
Yeah.
tell you that the first thing I thought of when I saw that first piece hanging is, boy, isn't it cool if those can be popped on and off? So that bottom half, you can
Yeah.
either wear it as a simple amethyst,
make a loop
Right.
thing on the bottom. So,
and then you
yeah.
can slide it on and off. That's a perfect design for that. And people love swappable earrings. Love, love,
Yeah.
love, love.
Really? That's
Great
interesting.
idea.
That's very cool. That's beautiful.
Really pretty.
Very
Thank you.
nice.
All right, who's next?
Carmen, who else?
Carmen, where is she?
All right, Carmen, you're up. What are you going to show us?
I just kind of want to,
Is it a ring?
no, not today.
You ran out of
I know.
fingers?
No.
What's
You have
that?
the same setup I have.
Similar, yep. Yeah, if not the same.
And what I did was I bought the GRS. to
Just the
replace-
base?
Just the base.
Clever. Because it's
And
rubber.
it really
not
helps
slippery.
because it's rubber. So that's the first thing I wanted to tell you.
Super clever.
Do I
Great
have
tip.
that?
And of course, I made this one.
Nice.
Ah,
Oh, you can't see
very
it.
good.
There.
So
And
which
bead.
setting was that? Was that the graver setting, the bead setting, or the
Is that
Oh,
no.
silver?
I was gonna start doing, but I took so much time just measuring everything.
Yeah.
Because I did 3. Well, actually I did 2. I did this one and I did this one because I don't know. I thought one was gonna
there-
be for the gem setting.
Yes. One
And
one
then
is
the other
thicker
one
metal
is-
that we're going to be
yeah.
setting down into, and the other one is the surface setting that you're doing. Yeah.
So these 2 are the ones that we did today.
Yes, although we're going to use the second one, the one that we just set in, we will also use for our star setting. So the
Okay.
one that you've been doing the cabochons on, just keep that for cabochons. That's going to be
Okay.
just play practice on all of your stitches. The other one is going to be a combination of a couple different settings, including star setting is going to be the next one we're doing, which you can see there's a little bit of cutting in. It's not a very good
Yeah.
example of it.
Okay, so the 2 is good. So
Yep.
I'll be doing some homework
Yeah.
on that part.
Are those brass plates?
Yes.
That's actually a
Yes.
good thing. So I hate working with brass, but for the stitch work, if you guys start in brass, they're much stronger stitches and they won't have quite so many failure points as I was getting in the silver. So it's not a bad way to go. Absolutely start with your brass and then get your control down and then work your way into silver. Just don't go to
What
fine
is
silver.
it?
Well, I remember, well, first of all, 18 gauge is so expensive. And I'm like, I'm not spending the money to practice on 18 gauge. And you had said that brass we can use. So I found 18 gauge brass and then I
Nice.
just cut it.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
At Dick Blick, they had it there.
Oh,
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
that's a
I
art
just-
supply.
The art supplies place.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just went and I bought it.
that's cool to know because there's Dick Blicks all over the United States, at least.
Yeah, I
came
have
like
one.
this.
Yeah,
like
because
this.
it's hard to
This
find the
is-
heavier gauges in hardware
That's
stores.
for-
I know. That's why I was like so shocked. So I spent $100 just on brass
Uh-oh.
because
Can I do
it's
copper?
hard to find.
Can it be done with copper?
You don't, so the
Gracie said
stitch-based
no.
ones, you generally
I
don't want to
would
do copper, it's too
no.
soft. Same as fine silver. So you saw how easily they were breaking off then? They're gonna get bendy and foldy because they'll just catch on anything. You might be able to get away with the faceted settings. because we're squishing it down enough, but absolutely not with the stitch setting.
So brass.
Brass or sterling. Yeah.
Yeah.
And play with it. I mean, your mileage may vary, but that's my experience, is that those stitches, anything that you breathe on them too hard and the stitches bend out of the way.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I was practicing, but
Good.
I have a lot to go.
Nice.
You know.
Yeah. And this is one that your skills go away if you don't use them for a while and you have to practice
Mhm.
again. Next one. What was the other thing you were going to show?
An invention.
Okay.
My spouse made it for me. I put this against the table, and then I put this, if I want it to be thicker, I put that, and then I put this. So it's holding it while I'm using the engraver.
That's
Oh, that's really
awesome.
good.
That's
Really
wonderful.
good.
Can you send him over to my house?
Yeah, send me one, please. One
That's
more
well, it's-
tool.
Happy
That's
Valentine's
cool.
Day to you, right?
Well, let me see how much scrap I have left over.
Nice.
How many are in the group?
Well, there's 167 people registered, but only about
Hey.
12 or 15 of you show up regularly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so
Anybody
it
else
really
have
helped.
other
I
other
have
things they wanna
things,
show?
but I'm not finished. So I'm not gonna show you until they're finished.
Okay. So that reminds me, Sonia, there's something that I would love the group to consider doing. At the end
Yeah.
of this process, I would really love to be able to send John a boatload of pictures of things that you have done as part of your studies along the way. I'll send him the master board that we've got put together when we're done. But I would love any photographs that you can give of your work so that I can
Just
just
send him Carmen.
Pardon?
Just send him Carmen.
Anyway,
So
I try. That's all I can do.
no, that's amazing. This is that you got to do your
Yeah,
practice
it's
your own
good.
way.
it's good.
So next
Yeah.
session, we're gonna do the star setting, which is just an offshoot of what we just did. And we will actually get started on chapter 6, believe it or not, next time, because we're gonna go straight to flush settings. For flush settings, I'm gonna actually the first thing he does in flush settings is the true gypsy setting, which is the one that's done in wax. I'm gonna leave that till the end of that chapter, or at least partway through the chapter, because it'll be really tedious to get the wax, and then I'm gonna have to send it out for casting because I don't do my own casting, and get it back in for that final setting.
Star
Well,
setting, we're gonna
So we're doing star setting next, which is the last setting in this chapter, believe it or not. Again, they get a lot shorter. And then we're
Yeah.
doing flush settings is our next chapter. But flush settings includes a really weird array of things you do to very large stones and things you do to very tiny stones. So we're going to do the tiny stone stuff, and it's going to sort of progress us from what we're done now. And then you guys had asked that I do a wax carving on screen. So that's going to be like a whole session unto itself, because it gets messy and uses very different tools, and I don't want all my other stuff out while I'm doing it. But if you're really interested, I have a waxworking class live and in person in beautiful Portland, and it's a lovely time of year to be in Portland. It's all the spring stuff is starting. We already have crocuses and bulbs and trees starting to bud and so on, and rain, but it's also sunny. So there are a couple of spots left.
I took that class before, but I remember the only thing that I remember is when in doubt, add a sprue. Sprue.
Yeah, we don't actually cover spruing in this, because my whole thing is this is an introductory class, and my whole thing is send it out to be cast and let them sprue it, because the pros will sprue them for you better than you ever will.
Oh, okay, so then I am a pro because I learned the whole thing how to sprue.
Nice. All right. Any other things to
Okay.
share before we wrap for this evening?
You have a
Okay.
bracelet.
Oh, the bracelet, the new bracelet? Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
wearing it
yeah.
to see how I like it, and I'm pretty
Ah,
pleased.
let's see.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Here, let me put it up on the big
It's
screen. This is a
nice.
collection that has been
This is the
fighting.
one in the picture.
Oop, hang on a sec.
I remember liking the weight. Let's see.
So this collection is called the Cirque collection because it has little
Ooh.
trapeze-like hinges, and I did the earrings
Oh.
and the main
Ah,
necklace.
so it moves. In the photo, it looked like I thought it's not movable. I thought it was stiff.
Wow.
Inches.
Oh, that is nice. That's really
Yeah.
nice.
Very nice.
Very
So
good.
I'm pretty pleased. It has the elements of the larger necklaces. And so I have the stone set in gold on them, and it has the flexibility. I have 3 different shapes that I do these in. So I've got to play with. This is just the first. This is the prototype. But it's very comfortable, and that's what I was aiming for in a bracelet. I wasn't sure if I was going to have to do something clasped or not.
Mhm.
And then I managed to make the ring too. The ring does not flex. I was
Okay.
stuck on making everything flex, and then I was like, what? We don't need a ring that flexes. It's just gonna poke people if it flexes. So they both made me pretty happy about that series, the way it's progressing.
So it's all
beautiful.
hinge and you don't have a clasp.
No clasp. It is technically hinges. Yeah, it's teeny tiny little tubing. It's not full hinges, like it's not a 3-parter. It's just it's more technically more, it's a rivet hinge thing. So it's just
Yeah.
a pin between them. And gold
Cool.
balls on the end. So this is a series that I sometimes blacken alternating pieces on to pop the gold and stuff like that. But yeah, it was nice to get some
Yeah,
new
beautiful.
creation in.
Because sometimes when you wear a bracelet and you hit your hand against the table, it bounces. So I could see
Yep.
that being very comfortable.
Yeah.
That's the goal. Yeah, I'm not a huge wearer of bracelets myself. I like them lightweight, but I make a lot of big bracelets. So the Weft collection is my woven stuff, and those are chunky. But yeah, I like it still keeps texture, which is one of my things, and it still keeps the rough look of stones and materials. So I'm pretty pleased with it. We'll see where it goes from here. Thank you for asking. All right, gang,
Cool.
our next session is March 1st. Just a heads up that it looks like the April 1st session I probably will cancel because I've got some business stuff I got to take care of, some day job work stuff I got to take care of, but I'll let you know probably next session when I've got those plans locked in for what my dates are. And we're going to be zipping to the finish line. So again, if you have not sent me things you would like me to redo as we get to the end of the book, you can either post it on the Facebook group or drop me an email, and we will.
What do you mean?
There's a couple settings that I personally want to redo, the dreaded emerald cuts that I have to redo. And so anything that people would like
to see that.
Yeah, anything that people would specifically like to see either in more detail, including maybe I can swap my cameras around now that we've got all of them, with like all of the ones that we've done that I've done soldering on close up. Maybe I leave the good camera on the bench for the next round of them, so that you're seeing more of the handwork that I'm doing and less concern with the actual soldering. But you guys can tell me what you want for visuals on those as we do them.
Definitely the
Which
trillion.
ones?
The trillion. Somebody had a request for trillion. Yes. What else?
Yeah, trillion and the emerald, and I can't think of anything else right now. But which ones are you thinking that you would like to redo?
I posted up on the list. I know one of the things people requested was seeing what it's like to do an odd shaped. Let me put this on the good camera. Odd shaped stones. So the ones that have cutbacks and things like that, and what the challenges are that those entail.
That looks rich.
It does, doesn't it? I love these funky shapes, and I have boatloads of them, and I don't do enough with them. It's usually I do one and then I make some design around it.
I like that.
What was
I
the
like
other?
that one. I have like several of those odd shape ones.
Yeah,
So
and this,
will be that one.
I'll tell you, I'll do these any day over an emerald cut. So yeah, any of the ones that I feel like I did really, really badly on, I still need to buy some triangular stones. They're just not out there right now. I need some good faceted triangular stones, not trillions, but actual triangles, because that's a couple that I needed to redo. What else? I don't know. I posted the ones that I was sure I needed to redo. And I'll
Where
also
did you post?
up on the Facebook
In
group,
the
there's a posted I mean, whatever it's called, stickied post up at the top that you can add.
Okay. I will check it out. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, gang.
Are you
How-
familiar with Optima Gem?
No, Optima
Who?
Gem. Is it a
Optima Gem, it's a wholesale gem place. I think they're out of maybe Santa Barbara or something like that.
okay.
And they have tons of stones. I think they might have, some of the it might be worth looking into.
Yeah.
They have
so
Do they have a website, Betsy?
yeah, it's optimagem.com, I think. And I
Okay.
think you have to sign in with a wholesale number, and then you have an account. And they have everything from, like practice type CZs to very, very fine stones, and they tell you the grade and all that
Nice.
kind of stuff going in.
Where do you get the man-made sapphires? I haven't been able to find.
So there's a bunch of places that sell man-made sapphires now. If you're looking for true sapphires, even though they're man-made, there's a lot of overseas places. And
Best in Gems.
House of Gems. Was it?
Best in Gems.
Best in Gems.
They
Oh, they
have-
have the manufactured ones too.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, cool. If you want guaranteed gonna be problem-free Columbia Gem House, but they're gonna be a lot more expensive than others. They are a cruelty-free.
Yeah, I know who they are. Okay.
Yeah.
No, but I want them so I can solder with the stone and
Yep.
see if it works.
Yeah. Okay, well, we also have some other gem places posted in the group. So you poke around in there's, I think I made a guide that was just for links. I can't remember. It's been a while since I set that up. So poke around there and toss ideas up if you find ones that you like. And we will meet again in a few weeks, gang.
Rachel,
you.
thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
See you guys.
Bye. Thank
Thanks.
you. Take
Bye.
care.